call this meeting of the Anchorage Budget and Finance Committee to order. If my colleagues could please take their seats.
We've got 10 members outside the hallway.
Thank you. What's up? Mr. Trainee, are you on the phone?
I'm online.
Great. Okay. Ms. LaFrance, do you want to join us? Okay. Okay, great. All right. Mr. Constant, are you joining us?
Here.
Okay. All right. We'll start. We haven't started yet. All right. We're doing roll call. We'll start with you, Mr. Dyson.
Dyson.
Okay.
Lance Wilbur, Office of Management and Budget. Alex Lifka, Chief Fiscal Officer.
Forrest Dunbar.
Austin Davidson.
Dean Peterson.
Susanna France.
Don Welton. And on the phone?
Dick Brady.
Perfect. Okay. So we'll get started. New business. Financial status, Mr. Slifka.
Thank you. I'm going to start by asking Mr. Moore to come up and give you a brief update on revenue year-to-date for 2018.
Great. It's Dan Moore, our treasurer. Also, for everyone else here again, we have plenty of pizza. Please go get some pizza. Okay.
Okay,
Go ahead, Mr.
so
Moore.
I'm just going to focus on revenues and how we're doing for 2018. Last time we reported it was somewhere plus or minus 500,000 is compared to budget. Our current projection is negative $1 million on the revenue budget, and primarily that is the investment earnings. That's going to be $1.5 million off of budget. That includes investment information through October. October was a rough month for fixed income and equities. So it was about a $500,000 decline just in that month. We still have November and December to see how that turns out. Another area that's actually new to the negative variance area is Build America bonds, subsidy bonds. We actually may still get paid for those, but there have been a number of requests made by the city to the IRS, I believe, to get that money, and we've only gotten a portion of what we have budgeted. So I think we're entitled to it, but I'm not exactly sure what the holdup is, but it's been worked on for quite a while. So that's $900-some thousand that is off budget there. The bed tax is actually positive. It's more positive than it was last time reported. The room tax for this year is up 5%. We assumed 4%, which 4% is very strong growth, but we actually even exceeded that, so that was good. In connection with that, rental vehicle is also up another $166,000. So both room tax and rental vehicle will come in quite positively. Marijuana tax is off about $250,000 from what we reported last month. It's still going to be very close to budget. We'll be in the $3.1, $3.2 million range. It turns out that September was actually was 4% lower in terms of revenue than August. So that was a change that we haven't seen. It's always been, every month has been bigger and bigger, but September did cool off. I think concentrate sales have gone down just slightly. Motor vehicle registration tax, that is going to be about $500,000 off of budget. That one has been a steady decline for the last several years. It's a reflection of the economy. It's a steeper decline this year than we anticipated. So those are the main changes since the last time we reported. There's still some very good positive news for PFD garnishments, property taxes with the audits that have been done. Those aren't exemptions. And people mover bus fares are actually much less worse than originally had been budgeted. So it's about $500,000 better off there. APD counter fines, which would be traffic fines that are collected timely, those are up about $250,000. So the volume and the value of those tickets have been more than the budget. And motor fuel tax is coming in. It was going to be $100,000 better than budget. Now it's about $175,000 better than budget. So those are the reports. We do expect before the end of the year to provide the Assembly with a formal, detailed written report of all the revenues. And we've been unable to do that earlier this year because SAP issues, but things have been caught up significantly, and we should be in position before the end of the year to provide with the written report. And that's all I have comments I have.
Mr. Peterson and Mr. Weddleton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, the investment earnings negativity, that's strictly a paper loss at this point?
Most of it is, but there is some realized loss also because the city uses active managers. So if they see that there's more opportunity to be somewhere else, they will sell out even at a loss to reposition themselves somewhere else. So, yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson. Mr. Weddleton.
So it's a big picture is $1 million short of where we expected.
Oh, I'm sorry, yeah, I should have said it. Overall, the net is about $1 million short on revenues for 2018.
That's our expectation.
That's projected from now to the end of the year. Like I said, if Build America subsidy bonds come through, that could get us right back to zero. So that's really the one area that we can cross our fingers the most on that'll actually come our way. Investment earnings, we just don't, no one knows. So.
Okay. Can I ask a question of the administration? Thank you, Mr. Moore. So the federal government appears, you said we're entitled to it, so they're holding out or stemming us on almost $1 million.
Alex.
Is that worth, there's nobody here from the media that I see, but is that worth the press release? Is that worth some kind of public pressure? I mean, it's $1 million that we are entitled to. Why doesn't the public know about it?
So some detail is that there's roughly two $500,000 pieces here. There's a $500,000 from 2015-16 that we are trying to recover. We've got paid for all of 2017, and we got paid for the first half of 2018. We just haven't received the second half payment. It's a complex challenge in that there was with our regular payroll tax payments, the IRS misapplied one of our payments. We made our payments on a timely manner. They missed a payment. They started to take every single payment we made subsequently as a late payment, so they started to charge us a bunch of penalties. And then we're just one tax ID, so they say, okay, you owe us these payroll taxes, but we owe you these Build America bond subsidy. Well, we're just not going to pay you. And that's kind of where we're at.
It was their error initially?
So their error initially on the payroll, which they got resolved, and so those things are going in now correctly, and as I said, and so all of 2017 we got correctly, first half of 2018 we got correctly, the second half, which we expected a month ago, hasn't shown up, and so that's where, quite correctly, in terms of how we actually going to treat it from a budgetary standpoint, we were expecting to receive the money that they owed us from 2015 this year. It's a challenge with the IRS, underfunded, people change positions, we've sent requests for information, we know they got it, they haven't sent us the information, so it's just unclear. It's not probable at this point that we're going to get that money before the end of the year, thus the adjustment.
It could be more of a timing issue because we are running out of time for this year.
Yeah, but I don't, to your comment, there's nobody, if there was somebody we could call to make it happen quicker, we've already tried that.
Thank you. Mr. Dyson?
Thank you. I understand that the state owes us reimbursements, maybe on street lights on their highways that we put up and they didn't reimburse us for. Do we have an account receivable with the state?
We do bill them regularly. I'm not aware of them being significantly in arrears. I don't know if Bill Falstein has heard that or not.
I hope my information's wrong.
Okay.
Okay. Can you give us a round number of what you think the fund balance will be at the end of the year?
I don't know that number. It could either be Controller Division or Alex. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm going to hand it to the chair to answer. So the fund balance number that we've given you previously is where 2017 was going to end. That hasn't changed. We haven't yet done that calculation for 2018 because we haven't, as I think was earlier said, we haven't made all those entries yet into the system.
Yeah, so tell me what you guess it'll be within $5 million.
We haven't even taken the time to make the calculation because, of course, 2 months ago we realized what we thought was a surplus was now a deficit. So I couldn't even begin to give you a guess. All I would say is, I wouldn't start spending money until we know what the number is.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Wilbur. Thank you, Mr. Moore.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, I think got an update on 2017 on the books are still being, the books are at the auditors, so until we hear back from them, we'll know how they've reviewed the submission that we gave them late last month. On 2018, right now at the end of October, we were 83% through the year, and the departments were about 75.7 to 75.9% spent. So they're underspent pretty well, and that includes the encumbrances that they have. I don't suspect any surprises overall. In general government, there's a couple departments that I'm keeping my eye on. Development services, they're managing their money right now, but they could be running a little bit hot. And then outside that, I think the only other departments are really related to their overtime budgets, but their total labor budgets, they seem to be doing pretty well. So we're keeping an eye on those. I think that's how, in 2018, as it relates to how we end 2018, in combination with Dan's point about our revenues not being on target, at least as of today, our spend is also we're underspending. So we're going to continue to manage our spend as our revenue projections come in to make sure that we're not, that we're managing both ends. So that's what I have on 2018, unless you have a particular comment or question about a particular department, whether it's overtime or travel or something. Okay?
Lance, this is Dick.
Yes.
I've got a question for you. Said that 2018 overtime may be running hot. Which department?
The assembly, finance, operations maintenance, and public transportation.
Nothing to do with police or fire, Lance?
The fire department is, nope, the fire department is not. The police is slightly, but I'm not worried about it right now.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
The other question is, in the news last night, relative to the Henry decision.
Yes,
We have to deal with next year, well, first quarter budget revisions.
correct.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to have a work session with administration on legal fees, if we could, sir.
We're going to have we just talked about this a little while ago. We're going to have a special meeting at 4 p.m. on Tuesday, so we can go into executive session about it.
Good.
Okay.
That's all the question I have. Thank you.
You.
And then, Mr. Chairman, as it relates to the 19 budget, I'll be in attendance to your work session tomorrow to see what kind of proposed amendments that you have, and then be working with the mayor and his staff if we're going to propose an version. So that's all I have on 19.
Thank you. So I have a question, sort of a broad question, and perhaps we can discuss this more tomorrow. You know, my colleagues and I have a number of budget amendments, and we try to identify specific offsets to the things that we do. But Mr. Slifka said, we have no real sense of what money is carrying over, right? I mean, it's such a moving target that I'm curious how we're going to do this with any specificity tomorrow and on Tuesday. I mean, we'll hopefully vote on the budget on Tuesday. Is it your recommendation that we don't vote on the budget on Tuesday and we put it off another 2 weeks till December 4th?
It's not my recommendation. I would
Okay.
recommend that you do it on the 20th.
Okay.
And I know that there's a lot of questions coming in from assembly members, so, and we're trying to help the assembly office respond to your questions as fast as you can, so that as you're preparing your amendments tomorrow, if you want to figure out what you want to take away to what you want to add, that you're doing that with the best information that we can provide.
Mr. Slifka and then Ms. Prowse.
So I might clarify Mr. Dyson's question specifically about the fund balance. That specifically focuses on just the 5 major funds. When you take the overall fund balance across the entire municipality, there is actually about a $2 million surplus. So overall, the municipality is in fine shape. And as Lance has said, year to date, we're trying to spend less than what our revenue is.
But that $2 million is not the kind of unrestricted fund balance that we could use in a 2019
Correct.
budget.
You're right. That's right.
Yeah. Ms. Prowse.
Through the chair to
The chair.
the chair, because you asked the question. The fund balance calculations, at least in my experience, correct me if I'm wrong, Lance, are utilized for additional amendments during 1Q budget amendments. So I think we're still aiming for having a calculation for 1Q budget changes if that happens. But in the past, if I recall, when the sometimes you do attribute it to, if there's fund balance available, we would like it to be spent on these few things. You can still do that. The cuts have to come if you want to ensure that it is funded with or without 1Q amendments and whether or not there is unrestricted fund balance available.
Thank you, Ms. Prowse. A question on, since you brought up an S version, I'm trying to recall, this is my first time as chair going through this process. For Ms. Jones or anyone else who might want to add answer. Typically when we do an S version, we reopen public hearing, correct? No. We're not going to reopen public hearing?
You don't typically do that. You do it sometimes.
Yeah. And do we do it with the budget?
No, in the past, when, for us, when an S version has been introduced, it's usually either to incorporate some assembly member amendments, but also a few technical changes that need to be made because of any information that has come about that OMB has brought or any of the departments have brought forward. So they're usually relatively small changes. I think that the resources are such that if an S version does come in, it would be relatively small changes.
Yep.
And Mr. Chair, typically what happens is after the Assembly work session on Friday, the administration takes the amendments that the Assembly has proposed, and those are included in the S that would be laid on the table then on Tuesday. And
Or those administrations accept they are.
that is correct. Thanks, Dick. And so for whatever those are, and plus the technical corrections. And sometimes we've seen that on Monday, and we'll have a document that we'll send to you on Monday. As soon as it's available, we'll post it on the website under items of interest, and we'll make sure everybody has a copy of it.
Great. I just want to make sure we're doing things how we always do them.
And if there is an S introduced, it will come across with a summary page that will just list the simple changes, so you know that everything else within the budget is the same except for these 5, 6, 7 things, whatever the circumstances.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions on the budgets for Mr. Wilbur? Mr. Train, do you have any?
Just on this, Lance, what did you say the amount of money coming from marijuana tax was?
320.
I think in our budget we have, I think in the budget we have I have to check, Mr. Trainee, I want to say it's 3.5 or 4. I don't know what the number is for 2018.
And Lance, how much from alcohol tax?
Huh.
Not a Fred Griswold, sorry. You take care, that's all, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee.
Morris.
Yep. Oh, Mr. France.
Mr. Chair. Lance, going back to 2017.
Yes.
And in the draft CAFR, it puts the fund balance at minus 6.4 million. And again, that's primarily due to two things, right? One being settlements that we didn't get until 2018.
Correct.
And then the other, a manual error resulting from recording some IGC type transactions as revenue.
That's part of it, yes. Yeah.
But that was not on the operations side. I guess that's what I am a little bit confused. If it was reported as revenue, what was presumably then additional money outside of what was budgeted to spend?
So I'll let Mr. Smith
It was
respond.
actually, it was not recorded as revenue, it was recorded as reduced expenses,
Okay.
which has the same net impact, but it was actually not revenue.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr. Wilbur? Okay, Mr. Tamani, I don't believe he is is he still on the Budget Advisory Commission?
Mr. Chairman, he is not, and the new chairman of the Budget Advisory Commission is Mr. Nolan Clouda. I will,
So we will update that, make a note for that, we'll update that. I don't believe Mr. Clouda is here, I don't see him.
Nope.
He and I have been in discussion a little bit, I believe they passed a resolution, or they're currently discussing a resolution to send to us, is that correct?
They are working on a draft resolution regarding all three budgets,
Okay.
and I expect that you'll receive that by tomorrow.
Yeah, well, we're getting down to the wire here, so hopefully they can get it to us soon. Let's see, okay, I was told that Susie either didn't have a report or was very short. Do you have anything additional to report, Ms. Marshall?
Yeah, sure.
finding that some of these experts are residents locally, or are we having to recruit outside of the position?
Well, we've been, so far so good, and we haven't really posted any, we did one posting on a technical position, but then it got withdrawn because of some error in the posting that we noticed, so they had to recall it, so I don't really have an answer on that, but so far it seems like we're getting, maybe it's somebody who applied who was in Mexico, the country of Mexico. So I think it's getting out there. So, and then our Karen Norwood really has some connections in this kind of spread that through Northwest a little more refined and how we can get more persons in front of more qualified people. So I think we've got a strategy, keep doing it.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall. Any other questions for Ms. Marshall? We have an update on the payroll from Mr. Falsey next, so hold the questions on that topic. Okay. Thank you, Ms. Marshall. All right, so we are moving on now to scope and status of pay correction liability. Could someone please hit the lights? Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Falsey.
Okay, after great sadness last time where I presented no slides, I brought back some slides, but not as many as we used to do. It'll be a pretty short update. The good news is we have a little bit of good news. So I'm going to give you the paper pay correction update and the paper pay correction status update. And remember, this is when people tell us something was wrong. This is where we were last time. We had an incomplete September when I last showed you the chart. And this is where we are now. The good news that is the first nice glimmer of good news here is that the chart has been basically the same the whole time we've been doing this, that we had this terrible period initially, then it seemed to stabilize at a place that was much more manageable. It's still not as good as we used to be. But the good news here is that October was the best month so far. We're not quite where we used to be back in the PeopleSoft area, but we're getting a lot closer. And that was the fewest number of paper pay corrections that we've gotten in. So maybe some additional signal that things really are getting back to normal slowly but surely. And then the other one is, this is where we were last time in October. You remember we had gotten through about 38% of the paper pay corrections. We may have completed more of them, but some of them we just need to pick up and verify that we've actually already allowed the system to pay the pay correction. But then we got stuck on 63 and we were just sort of high-centered there. A little bit of glimmer of good news is we have moved off of high center. We're now at 71% because we have pushed a lot through out of the defect category and the in review category. And it's even maybe a little bit better than just that we moved from 63 to 71. We also processed a record number of corrections this last month. We have been doing somewhere between 150 and 200. We did a lot more cross-training. We forced people, we set aside time for people to get through paper pay corrections just by blocking out hour-long blocks, 2-hour-long blocks. We did about 600 last month. So we're in this period now where we're still updating SAP generally, and that causes a little bit of disruption, but I'm hopeful that as we have really forced additional focus on this, that we will start to see real movement, and that by sometime early next year, this story will be done, and we will be at the, now we just processed the low number of corrections, we cleaned up the backlog. So that's where we are, but we're making a little bit steady progress. I'm hopeful that we're getting it done.
I wanted to ask you on this. What does an ideal steady state look like? You know, is full employment 95%, or what would this look like if it gets to the end?
Well, when we get to the very end, we should get back to a place where we get something like 30 to 100 pay corrections a month, and we process 30 to 100 corrections per month. So at any moment, I don't know what the pie chart would look like, but if we just looked on a month-by-month basis, there'd be nothing that's dragging over 1 or something. So that's the way the payroll system is supposed to work. We spend a couple of weeks actually doing payroll. We do all the compliance items, and we do whatever cleanup we need to. This is this extra workload that has just been sitting on top of the payroll department for a year that hopefully is getting close to being finished.
Great. Other questions for Mr. Falsey? Mr. Trainee?
Mr. Falsey, I got a quick question. The IRS, are we in penalty with them in any circumstance does best maintain?
I'm not sure I completely understood that question. The IRS, are we in any penalty status with them because of 2018?
SAP, I
SAP.
think is what he is. Are we in a penalty because of SAP?
I'm not aware of
I don't think we
anything,
are.
No.
I'm not sure if the question was 100% understood, but I think the answer is no, Mr. Trainee.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. I'll follow up later. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee. Any other questions on this? The IBEW representative is not here. Is that because you think we've made significant progress with IBEW?
I would like to think that. We have tried our level best to set up the meeting we promised last time. It is now calendared, but it has not yet happened. So hopefully we'll make some progress there too.
Okay. All right. Well, we're moving through this agenda pretty quickly. Any other comments from my colleagues or from the administration? Oh, Ms. Strauss.
I just wanted to remind the body that we are going to be introducing the IT reorganization ordinance. That should be coming to you. Did we determine whether or not it's on this ordinance?
It's on the agenda now.
It's on, okay. And it's the realignment of IT out of the CFO's line of report into the mayor's line of report, and it also includes the payroll realignment to the employee relations department as opposed to under the CFO.
Actually, this is not, thank you, Ms. Strauss. This is not budget related, but because I have the head of IT here, I'd like to ask, it was brought up at a community council meeting last night that one of the sort of risk factors that has perhaps led to the cyber attacks in places like Valdez and Wasilla is zip drives and the prevalence of zip drives in some of these places. I know at the National Guard, for example, we can't use zip drives.
You mean like USB?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, thumb drives, USB drives. Has that discussion happened with Uni? I mean, we thought about not using those kind of products anymore?
Yeah, we do have some guidelines on that for sure. We have, if you order one for use at the city, they have extra security on them. So
Okay.
they come with a password, and so they're probably more expensive than anybody wants to deal with. But yes, that's already, I guess you would say a guideline that we implement throughout the city.
That if we use USB drives, they're only a certain kind.
Certain kind, yeah.
Have there, I mean, I know like the
The ones that we purchase, I guess it would be hard to stop everybody.
well, the laptops that we get now from the National Guard don't even have a USB drive,
Oh, really?
or it's sealed off in some way.
Yeah, they just don't have, yeah.
Miss,
I can come up with a better answer for you.
well, I mean, it was just a suggestion from a member of the public. I'm not an IT security specialist, so if you feel it's not necessary, that's a fine answer. Ms. Jones?
Mr. Chair, all of the election laptops, the USB is disabled too, and MOAIT has done that for us.
Okay, great. Thank you. Ms. LaFrance?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. To
Hold on, Mr. Trainee. I'll get to you after Ms. LaFrance.
follow up on your comments about cybersecurity, question actually, do we have, I'm assuming we do, restoration plans in place in the event of an attack like the magnitude that Matson had, where they literally pulled out typewriters and I think Valdez had to handwrite checks to pay people, and they had to employ old school methods to get through it. I mean, telephones were disabled, and anything that was part of a network system, right, was offline in Vermatsu for a considerable period of time. What kind of restoration plans do we?
So we call that our disaster recovery planning. And we do have a plan that is to support the city as it deems, like each department is right now going through a process outside of IT that is determining what's critical business for them. So in a disaster, do we need to have a phone on so-and-so's desk operating? Do we need to have, and so we have, IT has a plan, but we also need to know exactly from the business what to do to make sure we fulfill that for them. So we're kind of shooting to have at the beginning of the year. All the businesses are supposed to go through what's critical to them by the end of this year, and then we'll take that and we'll make sure that we're supporting it. But we definitely, when the Matsu situation occurred, we went through a lot of drills on our side. Like, okay, what do we do? What's the first course of action? Say we running for the wall, pulling out the network cable? What are we doing? And so we definitely, my team went through each step on how we do it. So I do have a document details that. They put a lot of thought behind it. And then also part of that is our team. So we have the cybersecurity security officer that's for the state, for the state, for the municipality, and he has led an effort that is creating a cyber task force for the state. The state has the ability to create such task force. So what it would do is the state is now leading that effort, but it's inviting all the professionals within other governments and also private sector to join this task force, and then for people to get trained up. So when there is an emergency in a situation, that there is a group of people that have the training and the skills that can just go help the community. And the goal is so that you don't get, there was some challenges with that too. They had vendors that were kind of swooping in and not really being helpful, but charging a lot of money. And so we just, it's the idea that you have trusted, trained professionals in the state that could be deployed as needed and get training. And so right now we're supporting the state efforts to do that. But our CISO really took the lead and initiated this. So, and the mayor is very supportive.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall. Any follow-up, Mr. France? Mr. Trainee, you had a question?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, thank you. To the administration, understand you want to move the IT underneath the CFO underneath the mayor. Why not move that function still underneath the city manager? I don't respond now. Please give it to me in writing, because if this comes in for us in front of us, I'll have questions related to that for you guys. So if you respond to me in writing, I'd appreciate it. The other thing is, how often do we back the system up independent of the network we're on? In other words, we have the capability of backing the system up periodically, so we've got a fail-safe in case the system is in fact infected.
Oh yeah, we have definitely daily backups for sure, and we have air gap them so that if there was an attack and it wasn't on our internal network, it won't impact our backups. Because that was
It's offside the network, so it's done stored separately now.
I think the yes is your answer. I think I heard your
Just give
question.
an answer, but I appreciate it.
Yeah.
And of course, that was about 6 years ago. The military stopped all flash drive on USB connections of any kind. Because I was working in IT at that time, and I remember the fervor we had when we told me you can't use that anymore.
Yep.
Well, I will
They
tell
were
you.
just data getting into the military system.
I will tell you that when hanging out or having briefings with the FBI after the Matsu event happened, there was a lot of conversations and a lot of meetups with the FBI. And no matter, like they would talk about all the different ways the bad guys get in, and they kept saying, well, we know everybody wants some kind of fancy new, they're doing this now and that now, but really it's email, and that's how they get in every time. And they're going to keep doing it because it works. So there, we just keep doing layers and layers of protection, and we are also going to be hiring an additional security person for our IT to make sure that we have enough bandwidth to keep eyes. Like you can have all these monitoring systems, but if you're not looking at them, it's not very helpful. So we're getting another person on board so we can keep eyes on stuff and make sure we're good.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall. Mr. Peterson, Mr. Weston, and then I'm going to close the work session. What's that, Mr. Trainee?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Trainee. So, Mr. Peterson, Mr. Welton, and then let's wrap.
Okay, thank you. And so I'm wondering, why would an employee need to use it? Is it like, can they send information electronically from department to a department?
Yeah. I don't know, maybe they're copying a presentation and taking it to somewhere else. I don't really know the specific needs, but it doesn't seem like it's a high demand item at all.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mr. Welton.
Just a comment, FNBA does not let any people use email outside of their system.
Oh,
Very
right.
few people, so we drive people crazy.
Protected, yeah.
And I was reminded that from
Yes, we were going to do that. Okay, thank you, Ms. Marshall. Thank you, Mr. Welton. All right, so we're done with other comments. We'll go now to audience participation. Would anyone like to participate? Go ahead, Mr. Haberman. You have 3 minutes.
My name is Eugene Cohen. I represent myself, follow public process done appropriately, issue made by governing body, public officials, living in City Valley. Number one, before you started the last regular meeting of the assembly, the news noted that there were 3 public hearings. So the public was told, although you had a meeting, we said, I'm talking about the budget, okay? End of the meeting, to the end of the meeting, you said there'll be no more public hearing on the budget. The fact is, the public was told, we're getting that newscast, there were 3. I also signed during the assembly meeting with some members of the assembly thinking that there was going to be, it was my quest to be 3 public hearings, but look what we got here. The most complex and complicated issue is, the more noise, the more opportunity the public heard. You're not doing that. You're talking about putting a whole mess of stuff that's laid on the table Tuesday, really great. And I remind you too, Thanksgiving is Thursday. A lot of people go away for Thanksgiving. It doesn't make it 2 days, Thanksgiving, but several days. So you got a lot of people in Anchorage visiting relatives, traveling long distances, being with their family and so forth. And this is the time to rush a budget as complicated as issue and not giving a fair chance to the public to be heard. And then the mayor is present. I'm glad because the remarks I repeat just shortly is that there was a notation about 2 letters by the MEA, one dated February 27th and another to the administration 10/22. And I pleaded with you, protested, they need to get those letters out and post them as part of the packet dealing with the agreements that are proposed, dealing with Municipal Light and Power and QDASH. And the public should see those communications. And the response to those words at the previous meeting we just had before this was that at one of those parties, well, one of those parties is the administration and the mayor. So I'm doing present that we need to see those letters to the public and needs to be posted immediately and part of the packet for the meeting on Tuesday. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Haberman.
With 25 seconds to spare.
We're adjourned.